Before we get into this video, I want to preface it with a note that there are good men out there. And yes, I know that sounds very close to not all men, which is a stupid statement used to shut down feminist discussion. What I mean is not that there are men who have escaped gendered socialization or who are free of misogyny or sexist attitudes, but that the idea that all men are inherently misogynistic or sexist is a form of biological determinism, no different than the idea that women are innately more suited to child rearing, are born kinder, or are meant to be in service to others. If we are to believe that men are born innately cruel, innately with the desire to dominate women, where do we go from there? It would imply the fruitlessness of feminism as an attempt to change nature itself, as useless as trying to prevent puberty or aging. My perspective is that patriarchy is not biologically determined, but socially. And as a result, I know that there are men who stand above others, who do not watch porn, who do not place their goals or desires over that of the women in their lives, who do support women's liberation, just as there are women who are staunchly opposed to women's liberation. I have one male friend who I've been close with for over 8 years. He is the only one I've ever had who has been respectful, who listens to and is willing to hear out opposing viewpoints, who agrees with many, if not all, of my radical feminist points, and has never intruded upon or made me feel uncomfortable. That being said, I would not seek out male friendships as a radical feminist due to the pattern of male behavior that I've personally experienced, as well as the theory and statistics that I know of as a radfem. In other words, this is a complicated and nuanced discussion, but one I think that is important to have. So, with all that out there, let's discuss the difficulties in having male-female friendships.
So I don't know the specifics of this post, but reading the comments, it definitely proves something that I've been saying for a while. Women don't know what it's like to have male friends. They don't understand the dynamics of friendship between males. And reading those comments, yikes. Like there was one, they don't understand the fear they instill in us, or just a bunch of nonsense. That one, I just recently read that. Men say some of the most absolutely horrendous things to each other as friends. Crimes against humanity, just awful things. And it's all just, that's just how we communicate. I don't know. I don't think a lot of women understand. If it seems like a joke, it probably is.
I think this idea that women misobserve male friendships is absolutely absurd. The reason that your female friends are so scared of you when they see you talking to your male friends are because they understand your friendship so well. In reality, the reason that women get so afraid of you when you say these things is because we know that you actually do hold these positions. You're just too afraid to admit it to yourself and those around you, and so you use joking as this safety net from criticisms that you know you'd otherwise get if you overtly stated how you felt. Nonetheless, let's see what else you have to say.
But one thing is funny to me. Men will say some of the most absolutely horrendous things to each other and be their ride or dies. Women will be the nicest they could possibly be to their friends, and they'll still cut each other's throat.
You were a centimeter away from getting the point. You failed to realize, but still somehow correctly assessed through this mind-numbing right-wing one-liner, that the archetypes of interpersonal relationships of men and women are both equally as toxic. And furthermore, pedestalizing this male archetype under this false notion that it's somehow on a moral high ground to the female is the worst way you could have analyzed this, to say the least. These two archetypes are the exact same thing. The only place that they differ is the ways in which they reach this level of toxicity. In the female archetype that you described, women would mask their dislike or even hatred for one another through this form of overt chirpiness or happiness towards that person. And the male archetype that you described does the exact same thing, just inversed. They use the exact same tactic of safety net joking, but instead of aiming them at marginalized communities, they aim them at each other. And do not mistake my words, I'm not saying that this thought process is conscious by any means. If anything, it's severely unconscious. And nonetheless, I'm sure you'll still be stitching this video talking about how you simply do not have thoughts like this, and I have no idea what I'm talking about. But I digress. Let's see your closing statement.
And for that one comment, is it possible you're instilling fear into yourself? Could you be afraid of something that isn't there?
Just straight up gaslighting. Can't say I'm surprised, but it's definitely a fitting way to end this video. However, I would like to end on this note. Framing your bigotry, or in this case vitriolic misogyny, as a punchline does not cancel out the fact that it is still bigotry or vitriolic misogyny.
It is a common experience for male-female friendships to turn into romantic relationships. Or, not really, but the expectation that it will occur is always there. From the parents who know that their toddlers might grow up and date one day, to the men within the friendships who are only friends with the opposite sex out of a hope for romantic or sexual connection somewhere down the line. Adrienne Ward in Men and Women Can't Be Just Friends writes of a study that illustrates this point. In order to investigate the viability of truly platonic opposite-sex friendships, a topic that has been explored more on the silver screen than in the science lab, researchers brought 88 pairs of undergraduate opposite-sex friends into a science lab. Privacy was paramount. For example, imagine the fallout if two friends learned that one, and only one, had unspoken romantic feelings for the other throughout their relationship. In order to ensure honest responses, the researchers not only followed standard protocols regarding anonymity and confidentiality, but also required both friends to agree, verbally and in front of each other, to refrain from discussing the study even after they had left the testing facility. These friendship pairs were then separated, and each member of each pair was asked a series of questions related to his or her romantic feelings, or lack thereof, toward the friend with whom they were taking the study. Men were much more attracted to their female friends than vice versa. Men were also more likely to think than women that their opposite-sex friends were attracted to them, a clearly misguided belief. In fact, men's estimates of how attractive they were to their female friends had virtually nothing to do with how those women actually felt, and almost everything to do with how the men themselves felt. Basically, males assumed that any romantic attraction they experienced was mutual and were blind to the actual level of romantic interest felt by their female friends. Women, too, were blind to the mindset of their opposite-sex friends. Because females generally were not attracted to their male friends, they assumed that this lack of attraction was mutual. As a result, men consistently overestimated the level of attraction felt by their female friends, and women consistently underestimated the level of attraction felt by their male friends. This study, along with a follow-up which investigated what opposite-sex friends found to be benefits of their friendship, illustrates a discrepancy between how men and women view their friendships with each other. Women view men as friends, while men view women as romance options they haven't unlocked yet. A 2015 study at the Norwegian Institute of Science and Technology found that both men and women find that their social signals are misinterpreted by the opposite sex. Women in the study answered that they had acted friendly towards a man and had this misinterpreted as sexual interest about 3.5 times over the past year on average. This is known as sexual overperception bias, which is a tendency to overperceive another individual's sexual interest in oneself. The bias predominantly occurs in men, where they are more likely to overestimate a woman's sexual interest, while women are more likely to underestimate a man's. This uncertainty is something that women learn to fear after having enough male friends show their colors. Even when you are not sexually compatible due to sexuality differences, men will often view you as a romance option that may become available due to circumstance. And it's important to remember that, according to one study of male students at the University of North Dakota, 1 in 3 men would rape a woman if they could get away with it. Researchers evaluated data gathered from 73 men and found that a third said that they would force a woman into sexual intercourse if they wouldn't get caught and there wouldn't be any consequences. Those numbers dropped when researchers explicitly used the word rape, but even then, 13% of participants said that they would rape if they could.
We were sitting around one day, we were shooting the scene, and there was this porn video that was going around called 2 Chicks, 1 Cup. We were sitting around a table, and the guys started texting it to each other and watching it and laughing. Then they started saying, "Oh, Callie, that looks like you. That's you." Every one of them individually was a friend, but they became a wolf pack immediately. And I'm looking around, I'm the only girl. And I was like, no, seriously, knock it off. I don't like being called a shit-eating whore. And they doubled down. And one of the people at that table at the time was a very, very close friend. I was looking over going, he's got the most power of anybody in this room. All he's got to do is say, hey, leave her alone. That's all it would have taken. Like, no grandstanding, no fist fights, no nothing. Producers, directors, first ADs, all standing around, all seeing this, all hearing this. It was a moment, and this happens as a woman walking through the world, when all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm way more vulnerable than I realized I was.
Just because a man is your friend, family, or someone you trust, doesn't mean that they are trustworthy or that they are incapable of committing harm against you, purposefully or not. 8 out of 10 rapes are committed by someone who knows the victim. Every woman thinks that the men in her life are the exception. Every woman thinks she's smart enough to have chosen wisely. But just as we argue regarding the inability to determine which men in the women's bathrooms intend to commit harm, it's impossible to truly know. In addition to both members of the friendship viewing each other differently, there is also an unequal amount of labor placed into maintaining their relationship. Introduced in 1983 in Hochschild's The Managed Heart, emotional labor originally referred to regulating or managing emotional expressions of others as part of one's professional work role, but has been used more recently to refer to the same experience in interpersonal relationships between friends, in romantic relationships, and in other contexts, although the correct term is emotional work. As explained by McKenna Prinsing, emotional labor is suppressing or downplaying your emotions. It can also involve coworkers, friends, family, or acquaintances, treating you like their therapist. Being asked to explain or discuss issues like systemic racism, when those issues directly impact you, is emotional labor too.
What do we mean when we speak about emotional labor in relationships? Emotional labor is a spectrum, and every single relationship has a level and a value of emotional labor. It's beneficial when both parties are equally outputting the same amount of emotional labor. When one member of the dynamic is consistently asked to output more emotional labor than the other, or there is discrepancy between one member's output to the other, this is when a relationship has the potential to be harmful or no longer serve the partner who is outputting more than the other. So let's go over some examples of the spectrum of emotional labor, starting off with being asked to educate, emotionally support, or compromise. This one is pretty expected in romantic relationships, but if you are being asked to do this without any reciprocation, there's an issue. Making your own emotions small to pacify another. Expressing one's needs without reciprocation or acknowledgement, especially if this one becomes a frequent occurrence. Okay, part 2.
Having to explain aspects of your life that those who are more similar to you automatically understand, such as women commiserating over experiences of sexism and misogyny, or two people of color over experiences of racism, can be draining, especially when faced with such resistance to acknowledging that those experiences even exist. Have you ever had to convince a man that, yes, you were mistreated because of your sex? That the car salesman did talk to him the entire time instead of you, or that your visit to the hardware store was made more difficult by the clerk talking down to you the entire time? And it doesn't even cover the things that are even more difficult to discuss because we don't have the words for it. This is known as hermeneutical injustice, which is injustice related to how people interpret their lives. As defined on Wikipedia, hermeneutical injustice occurs when someone's experiences are not well understood, by themselves or by others, because these experiences do not fit any concepts known to them or known to others, due to the historic exclusion of some groups of people from activities, such as scholarship and journalism, that shape the language people use to make sense of their experiences. There are experiences that we hold in common that we do not always have words for, and the burden of trying to explain these experiences, especially to people who are the root cause of and benefactors of these negative experiences, is emotionally draining. Psychologist Don Byrne found that we tend to prefer people who are similar to us, both romantically and in friendships, hence why people tend to marry and keep friends of the same educational and socioeconomic background. He found that most of us have a need for a logical and consistent view of the world. We tend to favor ideas and beliefs that support and reinforce that consistency. People who agree with us validate our attitudes and so satisfy this need, whereas people who disagree with us tend to stimulate negative feelings, anxiety, confusion, and maybe even anger, that lead to repulsion. Byrne's early research was limited to similarity of attitudes, but other research suggested that there may be greater attraction to others who share similar socio-demographic dimensions. For example, studies have shown that online daters are more likely to contact and reply to others who have similar educational and ethnic backgrounds as themselves and are of a similar age. However, Byrne's later research suggested that attitudinal similarity may be more important than socio-demographic similarity when it comes to relationship formation. All of this essentially reflects the idea that men and women seek different things in friendships, and that this mismatch can lead to discontent in male-female friendships. In an article titled Why Male and Female Friendships Are So Different, Frank T. McAndrew notes that men preferred their friends have wealth, status, and the ability to help them find new mating opportunities, while women expressed much more interest in friends who offered emotional support, who would help them hang on to the mate they already had, and who could be relied upon to have their back in a conflict. And cross-culturally, men tend to report having a larger number of friends, but less intimate ones than women. Women are also more likely than men to explicitly discuss the closeness of their relationships with their friends, more likely to identify someone as a best friend, and they also more easily distinguish close friends from people who are just a friend. Men generally seem to use the word friend more loosely than women, and they also tend to express less from relationships than women do. I'm not arguing that male-female friendships are impossible, but merely that there are dangers and difficulties that can make it difficult to truly be on equal footing. From misunderstandings of the nature of the relationship to the uncertainty of being seen as a romantic option, the same critiques that we hold about hetero marriage or partnerships still often apply to male-female friendships. We should remain mindful of these issues, not as proof of the impossibility of men and women being on equal ground, but in order to protect ourselves from harm, both mental and physical. This, dear viewers, is where we part. The idea for this video came to me because I was kind of thinking about some of the people that I met while here in Cambodia. This is another video that I'm recording before I leave Phnom Penh. And most recently, I had a sort of fallout with a friend who I had befriended at the bar. He was essentially the night bartender at a place I frequented a lot. And what happens when you spend a lot of time at the same place, at the same hours, constantly, is that you tend to befriend people. And something that I lowered my standards, I realized. Like, he would make jokes or he would flirt, and I would kind of just let it go because I don't have a lot of friends here. And he would say things that were more misogynistic than I would usually stand for, but for the sake of, hey, we're not really close friends, it's whatever, I'm just here to get a drink, I don't want to mess something up, I would let it go. And the thing is, after a few weeks, I realized that it wasn't really even a friendship for me, it was just a toleration of someone's company, because I couldn't really be sure if this guy was attracted to me or not, and that uncertainty was something that kind of terrified me. It's so easy for women to be put into a romance zone. Men complain about this friend zone all the time, but it is far more hurtful for someone to expect romance from you, to expect something that you were never intending to give, and to be dropped so hot when you go against this idea. And of course, I was comparing this to my oldest friend. He actually watches this channel pretty regularly. We talk all the time. We went on vacation together back in May to Japan. Like I said, we've been friends for 8 years, and throughout high school, I had so many male friends who were only friends with me because they had a crush on me. I've had so many experiences of me very explicitly stating, I am only attracted to women. That's it. Not men. Not at all. I just want to be your friend. And somehow that still gets heard as this is a romance option that I can wait out, whether it be waiting until I'm in a vulnerable position to make a move, or just enjoying the premise of having a holy grail that would never be attained be within view. It's something that's really hurtful, I think, to a lot of women when you really want to be viewed as just another person. And when person is viewed as synonymous with male, when there is no neutrality but the male neutrality, it can really be painful to be continually placed back into that box of woman when you just want to be friends with someone who happens to be a guy. If you guys have any similar experiences, let me know in the comment section down below. Any comments, questions, concerns, etc., let me know, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.